Hi, I'm Jack Craven. I'm the author of Aliveness Mindset, Lead with More Passion, Purpose, and Joy. And to me, happiness is Sunday nights when my three daughters join my wife and I, and we have dinners and converse and catch up and connect and laugh a lot.
Well, that's like the opposite of the Sunday scaries, Jack. That sounds like the Sunday awesomes. I love that. How long you been doing that?
Yeah, we're lucky. Our three daughters live in the Chicagoland area, and so we get to see them often, and it is a meaningful time, and we are grateful for it.
Wow, that's awesome. How long ago have you always done that since they left the coop or what?
COVID really helped that. I can't really almost remember what happened before COVID, but I would say that the frequency increased, during COVID certainly, and that has maintained itself after COVID. So that's been one of the gifts.
That's beautiful. I love how you get a gift right out of some epidemic, right? That's crazy. So, well, first I want to congratulate you on your book, Aliveness Mindset. Beautiful book. I've got a nice advanced reader copy here. Thanks for sending that along. But you got to tell me, Jack, why should we pursue aliveness?
It's a different way of experiencing life. And I think all the things that people talk about are how to get more meaning in life, how to be more intentional in life. And I think it's easy to get distracted by what's challenging us, by the stress of life. And so this creates a game plan for each person to create their own daily mindset to make this a priority. And I can just tell you it's changed my life and the lives of my clients.
That's fantastic. Well, from reading your book, it absolutely seems like the way to be, but not everybody is fortunate enough yet to have read a copy of your book. So you got to tell me first, what does it mean to live all in? Because that's your big kind of premise here. The aliveness mindset is all in. What's that mean?
To me, all in is being fully committed, and it's being aligned to what is important in my life. How do I want to live my life? Who do I want to be with in my life? Who is priority in my life and in all areas? So that means personally, professionally, faith, community, relationships, whatever that is, I'm bringing the best version of myself and I'm making those a priority.
I can do that, right? That's something we all do, but why do people not do this? Is it just because they don't know about it, or do they consciously choose to not live all in?
Yeah, I don't think it's consciously choosing. I don't think anyone would say I'm consciously not going to choose to be alive. I think that, at least for myself, day to day gets in the way. You look at your calendar and all of a sudden that's the way you orient your day. And we tend to be reactive and we tend to get distracted and we tend to operate from fear. And when we're operating from fear, we tend to do things from a scarcity mindset. And this is a different way of looking at things where I'm going to have enough confidence and trust that if I make this a priority, the rest of my world is also going to turn out okay.
That's awesome. I love that. You mentioned Carol Dweck in your book and her growth mindset as someone who's certainly helped you. Who are some other thought leaders or other researchers that you found have been kind of complementary, if you will, to your aliveness mindset?
Yeah, thanks. There's many, but just a handful would be Jim Debthmer and Diana Chapman, who created the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. That's a model. Eric Langsher and Nate Klemp, who created Start Here, a lifelong well-being. Also, Arthur Brooks, Strength to Strength, and David Robeson, Expectation Effect.
Excellent. Excellent. Good. So some extra reading after people read the aliveness mindset so they can go deeper if this is their passion and their interest. So with that, you talk in the book, and I'm going to talk about the 7 mindsets or 7 pieces of this in a minute,
Yeah.
but you talk about how important it is, how we talk to ourselves being important. You mentioned that one of the executives, right, is kind of talking to themselves in a way that's less than productive. Why is that so important, and how should we be talking to ourselves, Jack?
Well, so I'm a perfectionist by nature, and I can be really, really hard on myself. And one of the traits is having an inner critic, and I'm not the only one that does that. And our brains have a negativity bias, so it amplifies the things that we feel we're not doing right. And so that can, when we're operating from there, we're operating under the heat of criticism. And I've read through Ethan Kross and Jim Lair and other leaders just the importance of listening to the voice in our heads. And how we talk to ourselves is one of the biggest impacts of our happiness. So one of the things that I encourage people to do first is pay more attention to how you're talking to yourself. Oftentimes clients I'll say, what are you saying to yourself in your head? And they say awful things. And I would ask them, would you ever say that to anyone else? And they would say, of course not. And so while they're recognizing that they wouldn't talk to anyone else that way, they still do it. And so what I like to have my clients do is fire your inner critic and hire an inner coach. Who's the person that was one of your best mentors? Imagine they were talking to you about the same situation where you're being hard on yourself. And with time and intention, you can soften that inner critic and become more of a vocal supporter.
Ooh, so if we listen, we can understand that we're being critical of ourselves, and then we can fire that critic, as you said, and hire a coach. Well, that sounds pretty valuable to me, and sounds like something that I'd actually want to do. Again, is that when you say that to the executives that you coach, I mean, is that like a light bulb moment that's like, oh yeah, I have the power here. This isn't something I have to do, or what happens?
It's a great point, Phil. For a lot of these things, yes, it is a light bulb moment. And because we're so wired and it becomes such a pattern, we have to really be intentional and work on it on a daily basis. So it's not a one and done, but it's over time. You're being more aware of it. You're able to reframe the way you're talking to yourself, and you'll progress day by day, week by week.
Yeah, a little bit every day would be
Yeah.
good enough for me. So with that, I wrote these down here. You've got a bunch of pieces here, 7 pieces. You got ownership, openness, awareness, authenticity, courage, tenacity, and love. Where do you want to start, Jack? You want to start with ownership, or where's the best place to
I
start?
do want to start with ownership, and I'll tell you why. And I can get emotional, Phil, even though I've told my story and thought about it many times, which is, about a dozen years ago, I was running a family business, and I was burnt out, and I was unhappy, and I was frustrated. And what I did a great job doing was blaming everybody else around me for my own unhappiness. And
Yeah.
so the big wake up when I was at a leadership retreat with Jim and Diana from the Conscious Leadership Group is they challenged me, and they said, "How are you creating all the results in your life that you don't want?" And while I got defensive in a second, I also recognized it's a lot easier to change yourself, Phil, than to change the rest of the world. And so step by step, you begin to look at areas where you're unhappy, where you haven't taken ownership, and you begin to take ownership. And some of these things are difficult to own, and yet there is a quicker path once you do take those steps and realize that I've created this outcome that I didn't want.
Yeah, it's all about us. I mean, then to your point, it is way easier for me to change me than it is for me to try to change you, or worse yet, 100 or 1,000 people that frankly they don't even want to change themselves either. This makes it
Exactly.
really difficult, huh?
Exactly. You've got it.
Cool, cool. All right, well, let's pop around a little bit here because I would put courage maybe as the next one. I know you don't, but let's talk
Yeah.
about courage and why it's important to be courageous to live in alive. To live in the aliveness mindset and to be all in.
Yeah. Thank you. Courage is needed when you're in fear. Courage is needed to give you the extra effort to face something that you haven't faced. And one of the things that I try to do, Phil, is take the courage of others and use that to inspire myself. Whether that's watching an impactful documentary, whether it's reading a book, and you hear about people who have overcome obstacles far greater than anything I've ever done. And that could be anything from Ernest Shackleton going to the Antarctic to people overcoming physical limitations to people overcoming health issues and recovering. And I read those books or watch those videos all the time to help me give courage to face whatever I need to face.
That's so interesting that we can take the courage of others, see their courageous moves, and give us more courage. How does that work, Jack? I mean, I know you've done a lot of work here. So tell
Yeah.
me, like, how does that happen?
A lot of it really is helping to put my situation in perspective. I think, Phil, when we're really kind of engrossed in our own challenge, we make it bigger. And again, that's part of the negativity bias of our brain where we make it a mountain. And one of the things that I encourage with my clients, but I've also done it myself, is break down whatever mountain challenge you think you have and break it into something smaller. And then you can also, again, rely on, something that you've seen from others and what they've done. And you've recognized my thing isn't as big as their thing. And we're not here to shame ourselves or to judge it. It's just, again, it's to help to put things in perspective to something manageable that we think we can overcome.
Well, and I also think to be aware that maybe, hey, this isn't that big of a deal. Like, I'm probably not going to die from this board meeting. I mean,
Yeah.
Jack's not going to shoot me in the head, right?
Yeah.
Jack is going to be patient. And even if he's impatient, it's not life or death. And I think that might be a helper as well, huh?
Absolutely. And one of the things that you were just saying that, which I really appreciate, is, putting things in perspective is, I think a lot of times, at least for myself, maybe I have a big project or a big talk or a big podcast I'm going to be on, and we notice that we're getting scared or we have some kind of level of anxiety about how we're going to perform. And yet, to me, sometimes the reminder is, I love what I'm doing. Can I just let that show? Can I just, again, it's being intentional. How do I want to show up? What are the things I'm passionate about? And let that leading the way rather than fear.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, let's go through a couple more of these, Jack. And one that I think is key, and one that I found, I read, and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And that's awareness. Talk to me about awareness and what that means, how that plays.
Sure. I like to say is awareness is the first step to change. If we're not aware of a pattern, if we're not aware of our own emotions, if we're not aware of how others are responding to us, then we're just kind of going through life in an unconscious state. And so awareness is, I'm recognizing that I'm in my pattern of my inner critic is here. I'm recognizing that I'm in my pattern that I'm in fear. I'm recognizing that I'm having a negative impact on others. Then it gives us a choice. So to me, it starts with awareness. The second step is recognizing I have choices, and I like to have my clients have those choices ahead of time. So in other words, when another situation comes up again, you have a game plan, you have a tool or two or a different option rather than responding in an unconscious or reactive way.
Yeah, well, it's much easier to respond when you have a choice than when you feel we're backed in a corner.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So that makes so much sense. I love that awareness is the first step of change. I think that's, being aware that I'm the problem, that I can fix me and only me, I think is a powerful, powerful tool for that. So let's go just a little bit deeper into that. I didn't see acceptance on the list, but what acceptance, is that part of openness, or where does that fall, Jack?
It's a great question. And Phil, I always like questions I didn't plan ahead of time, but the answer to that would be love, which is one of some of the 7 aliveness mindsets. And part of love is accepting all parts of yourself, accepting the part of yourself when maybe you hurt someone else that's important in your life, or that you made a mistake, that you didn't do it perfectly. And so I am glad that you brought that up, because self-compassion and self-acceptance is a big part of it. Kristen Neff's work on this, which is really, really significant. And I'm a big believer of, you have to repair yourself first. The kinder you are to yourself inwardly, you're going to show up more kind outwardly.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to the language. How are we talking to ourselves, and how are we doing that? Yeah. And Kristen Neff's work is fantastic on radical self-acceptance and all of that. Super powerful, super powerful. So let's go a little bit more into love. Is love the one that most executives resist the most, or when they first start, they're like, I don't need love, Jack. I'm good, man. My wife loves me. My husband loves me. I'm good.
Yeah. I think it is one that people maybe have a little more resistance, certainly people, and especially you talk about it with the wife. I think people are more open to talking about it with a partner. I think when you start talking about love in the workplace, people really can get skittish and worry about that. And what I like to tell people is that you don't have to express love. I mean, some people do actually express love to their peers, their coworkers, and I think that that's a wonderful thing. And I'm also here to say that that's not for everyone. One of the things I like to say is a way of showing love is giving someone your full attention. That means no devices, You're not distracted. You are there mostly to listen to them, to understand them. That is a way that you can show love in the workplace. And that's true actually for any part of your life.
That's so interesting that we can express love with really without the other person even knowing it.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So with that, you've got this idea of the practice here. Live it, feel it, and anchor it.
Yeah.
Talk to me about anchoring, because I think that's one that maybe gets a bad rap.
Yeah. Well, for me, and the reason I use the word anchor intentionally, which is it's a way of saying, this is how I want to, these are the traits. So when I talk about anchoring mindsets, these are the traits, and each person creates their own anchoring mindsets, which will give them a path to being closer to their aliveness. So for me, and it's something that you iterate, but for me, the 4 traits that I think of nearly every day, and you don't have to have just 4, it could be 3, it could be 5, it's whatever works for you. But my 4 anchoring mindsets are play, connect, learn and grow, and have impact. So those are what I call my anchoring mindsets. And when I put that into my consciousness and I think I want to show up in a playful way, play is a state of mind rather than an activity. Connecting is just, I'm not worried about how I'm showing up or if I'm impressing anybody or anything. I just want to connect with Phil right now. And I'm also here to learn and grow, curiosity. I'm here to not just share some wisdom, I'm here to take wisdom from others. And I do want to have impact, which means it's an intention of I'm going to be bold. I'm going to take risks. So that's my intention every day where I show up, whether I'm with a client, whether I'm with family or friends. And that's what helps me show up more alive every day.
Do you find that every day you're able to take a risk, or is it just really a mindset?
I think I take risks most days. Would I say every day? I don't know about every day, but I put myself out there, and it's really, Phil, about tuning in. If something excites me, I'm going to go for it. And so sometimes those are the risks I take. And that could be something tied to a client expresses a challenge in a different department. And I take the risk and I say, I'd love to work on that challenge. Here's the way I'd approach it. And that means I may not have even thought about how I would do it. I'm in a stream of consciousness. I'm articulating what the challenge I see and how I would approach it.
Okay, that's cool. That's pretty cool. So let's dive back to the 7 here, and then we'll kind of wrap up here. Before we do that, though, I want to encourage folks, if you're listening and you're loving this like I do, I encourage you to go to jackcraven.com. Check it out. Jack's got his model up there. He's got a lot of great stuff. You can get a copy of the book. A lot of good stuff there. He's got an awesome newsletter. So check that out. So, Jack, if we jump back in here, authenticity is one that I do my absolute best to live by every day. But I think it gets a bad rap. We talk about authenticity like, oh, be authentic. It's like, yeah, like be like tall. Like I can't be authentic. People aren't going to like me. They're not going to love me, or they're not going to love me back. So how do we overcome that and be authentic without being an asshole?
Yeah. Yeah. Authentic doesn't mean being an asshole. I want to say that. And so one of the things I first ask people about ways to get in touch with whether or not they're being authentic is your heart open or is your heart closed when you're about to speak, when you're about to take an action? When I say when your heart is closed, that means that there's likely some judgment. There's reactivity. I'm here to teach someone a lesson or express a judgment rather than I'm here for someone's personal growth. So when you're giving someone feedback, one of the things I might ask people before you give the feedback is your heart open? Are you here to truly help the other person rather than to cut them down?
Ooh, I like that. I'm going to replay that one for myself because
Okay.
I know sometimes I miss that one with my kids. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'm there to teach a lesson and I'm not open like I should be, especially with them. So, kiddos, I know you're not listening, but if you were, know that I'm working on that. So that's a good one. So, Jack, as we wrap up here, how do people get started on this aliveness mindset journey? Because it's not it's not just one decision. It's a lot of decisions. It's a lot of work. But let's help people get started. Where should they start?
I would invite them to think about when they've felt most alive. Start with that, and then have them just jot down a few memories of when they felt most alive. And then maybe write down a few traits. What are the traits? It might be calmness, it could be energized, it could be play, it could be travel, it could be adventure, whatever that is for you. And then I would be intentional. What's one thing I could do to be more alive today? These aren't things to talk about in the future. We can infuse little bits. If you could just do that once a day, how much better would your life be?
Wow. One little thing we can do every single day. Friends, I'd also tell you, go get a copy of Aliveness Mindset. It's an easy to read, but difficult to implement book because there's a lot here, but it's worth it, and you're worth it, friends. Go to jackcraven.com. That's JackCraven.com. Get to know Jack more and get a copy of Aliveness Mindset. Jack, thank you so much for sharing so much good stuff. I appreciate you.
Bill, truly a pleasure. I appreciate you. Thanks for the opportunity, and I truly enjoyed our time.
I do too. We'll talk to you again soon.